Hello and welcome to the next education class for Minecraft Studio. Today we're going to take a look at the sliders. So if you've not used Minecraft Studio before, it's one of the biggest parts of the graphics program, and each one does something different to our artwork. So we're going to have a look at it. We're going to work with the A Mother's Glory USB that's actually been released recently on the Highlight Graphs website as a USB or a download. So yeah, check that out if you haven't seen it already. So let's go straight into the demonstration. If you haven't used Minecraft Studio before, please check out the playlist on our YouTube channel that shows you all the basics. Episode 1 takes you through what is Minecraft Studio and why do I need it. So we are going to jump in as if you know a little bit about the graphics program, but I'll talk you through everything we're going to do in this class today. So let's have a look. Okay, so here's our graphics program. So we're going to go straight into the artworks and click on the plus beside my artwork. I'm going to click on the plus beside TRR, so 2 Red Robins, A Mother's Glory USB. So click on the plus beside there to open it. It's going to scroll down a little bit. You'll see in this one we've got collections, embellishments, flower pots, gradients and textures. So we're going to click on the plus beside collections, and you'll see in there we've got 4 different collections. So we've got a Mother's Love, At a Glance, Crown and Glory and Ready or Not. So we're going to have a look at A Mother's Love to start with. So we'll have a look at some of the scene building elements that are in there. So we've got beautiful, beautiful flowers. This is a floral themed collection of artwork. So let's have a look at our everlasting design here. Absolutely beautiful. So what you can see here is our beautiful flowers. I'm just going to stretch them up in size so that you can see everything that we do within the graphics program. So you can see here I've stretched it up quite large on the A4 page. I'm going to go into the effects tab. So we find that just above where the folders are. You'll see it says effects, we click on there and then we get all of these sliders. So we're going to run through these sliders here now. So we're going to go first of all with the opacity slider. We're going to literally work down. So the opacity slider makes something transparent. So if I pop this over the edge of the page and bring this slider across to the left, so you'll see there it actually fades the design down, but it's actually making it transparent. And the reason that it makes it transparent is because sometimes you want to do your layering, maybe you want to create rice paper designs, maybe you're wanting to build your own design and compositions, but also maybe you want to have the look of printing onto vellum, but we've actually only got paper to actually print onto. So this will actually soften the design down for you. So it actually fades the design down. So when I pop it back over the paper, it's beautifully soft there. So I'm actually going to just take it all the way back up to the top. So I'm just going to copy and paste so that you can see the original that we've got on here for each of these different sliders that we're doing. So I'm going to leave that one on the page just there. So again, we're going to click onto this one. Make sure you've got the boxes around it because that's the one that you're working with. So the opacity, if you imagine that something that is opaque is full and solid, and then we actually reduce the opacity to make it transparent. So that's why we would slide this one across. So if I then bring on another design, so if I pop that down to there, go to the files, and we'll bring on one of the gradients. So you can see here we've got some multicolored gradients. If I go with the pink and purple one, pop that over the page, and then if I just right click and send that to the back, so I want to send it behind that flower, you'll see now that this flower is transparent. So when I move this around the page, you'll see that when I pop it up here, you can see the white areas coming through the design. And when I pop it down here, you'll see that the detail of this particular paper is showing through the design. So this is where we're actually layering up the designs. So that's why sometimes you may need to make your images transparent. So to do that, we use the opacity slider. So I'm going to take that all the way back up to the right. So the next one is our contrast. So this actually adjusts the contrast between the colours. So you can see now we're actually making the colours quite similar together. So this is as if we're adjusting the contrast on our TV. So all we're doing is moving the sliders up and down just like you would with the buttons on your remote control. So you can see we're taking out some of the pink and making it tone with the purple there by using the contrast. If we go all the way across, it will actually take it to grayscale. But you can see we can just tone the design down in a totally different way there to what we did with the opacity slider. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to reduce the opacity. So I'm going to reduce the opacity and I'm going to copy and paste. I'm going to pop that one over to the side. So I'm just going to pop a few of these different ones around the side so that you can see the different effects that we're getting with these different sliders. So I'm going to take the opacity back up and then we'll reduce the contrast so you can see there we've done that there. So again, we're going to copy and paste, pop that one just down here, and you'll see we've got a different effect there with the same image. So bring the contrast back up. Now with the brightness, we can actually make the image really dark jewel tones. We can make it bright white as well, so we can go into pastel. So you can see we can go into pastel tones. Lovely, lovely soft shades there. So you can see we've gone pastel, but it's different to how it looks when it goes transparent. So when we make it transparent, it's the same colour tones. When we make the image pastel using the brightness slider, it actually adds a little bit more vibrancy, but just softens the actual darker shades of colour. So if I click back onto there, you'll see we're already halfway up into the brightness, but when we go all the way up to the right hand side, it makes the image solid white. So you can see there, we've actually got a solid white image. However, if we go across to the left, so you can see we're back at the beginning now, so back at 0 is back at the beginning. If I come across this way, you can see we're going really, really rich dark tones there. But if we come all the way across this way, we actually turn the design into a silhouette. Now that is where if you have a scan and cut, you can look at our Mel Heaton's video, and she's actually created a video that shows you how to then cut those files on your scan and cut if you do actually turn them into silhouettes. But you can see we've got lots of different options with the brightness slider as well. So if I just pop that one up there, what I'm going to do actually is just show you quickly as well with the brightness slider. If I bring this design back on again, and I'm just going to send that to the back. And if I click onto this one, go to the effects, take the brightness all the way up there. You can see there we can pop this down here, and then we can copy and paste. So then we've got 2 of those on the page. So if I go to the layers tab, you'll see we've got 2 on the page there. So we've got the white one, which is this one here, and this one here. So if I click that one back on, that's a white one, and then so is that one. What I'm going to do is take the brightness back to 0 on this one. So we're going to go to 0, but we're also going to fade this one down using the opacity. So you can see there, we actually get a different look. So actually the background isn't showing through behind the design. So if we bring the transparent one on, you'll see that when we actually put that one on the page, you can see the background showing through. So when I move it around the page, you'll see we can see the background showing through. But if I just zoom out of the page a little bit, click and drag a box over both of these 2 so that I group them together. They're now locked together, but when I move those, you'll see, because we've got that white one behind that is actually solid, it's actually just placed over the top of the paper rather than blending into the paper like this one does. So you can see there, just again, another different effect for you. So I'm just going to zoom back into the page, remove the background paper, and then I'm just going to ungroup those 2 so that I can copy and paste the top one. Just copy and paste. To get this menu up, I'm just right clicking, so I'm going to put that one there, group those 2 together again, and pop that one just there. So you can see there when we move it over to the side, this one's transparent, but this one has got the white layer behind it, so you can see the pure white behind those white flowers on the side just there. So you can see that is a solid actual design there. So I'm going to come back up to here, and we're going to click onto this one. I'm going to take the contrast back to 0. So to do that, I'm just clicking into this box here. So I'm going to click on there and go to 0. That takes it to grey. We've then got a really soft grey design, which actually means we've got a lovely shadow. So you can see there, a really soft shadow for wanting to add a little bit of detail around the design. So it's going to undo that, and then we're going to undo again, and we're going to take the transparency all the way back up there, and then we're back to the original image. So what we're going to do now is going to look at the colour section. So we've got 3 different sliders in the colour section. So we have the hue slider, the rainbow slider, and the saturation slider. So the hue slider and the rainbow slider each have 360 different elements of changing the image within them. So if I click on the hue slider, we're going to see that the design is going to change colour. It's going to change from red, shades of green, shades of blue, all the way through to purples and yellows as well. So it's tonal. So you can see here, everything within that image is changing to shades of a particular type of colour. So we'll leave it on the lovely orange there. I'm going to copy and paste again. I'm going to pop that one over to the side so we can see that just there. I'm going to click onto this one, and then we'll take that back to the beginning. And then we're going to use the rainbow slider. So with the rainbow slider, you'll see that we've got different elements of colour within here. So we've got the pinks and the lilacs, and then we've got greens. We've also got a bit of yellow inside the flower, the white flowers as well. So what will happen with the rainbow slider, where with the hue slider, everything changes to shades and tones of one colour, with the rainbow slider, each colour changes to a different colour. Each colour within the image changes to a different colour, so it kaleidoscopes around the design. So you see here, we're actually changing the colours of those different elements within this particular design. So we've now got purple leaves and green and blue flowers. We've got purples, and that's beautiful, isn't it? Really lovely for autumn on that one. Then when we get back up to the right-hand side of the slider bar, it goes back to the original. We've got all these different options. Again, 360 different options on this particular slider here. So I'm actually going to leave that one just, let's have a look. Let's go with this one here. So I'm going to copy and paste. We'll pop that one over here just so that we can see the difference there. And then we'll take this one all the way back, again, just back over to the left-hand side. So as you've seen already, to get the image back to its original, we can move the slider back to where it was at its starting position, or we can actually click into the box, type 0 and press enter on your keyboard. We can also delete it off the page and then just go back into the scene building folder and bring another one on if we wanted to. So back into the effects, and then we have our saturation slider. So with saturation, we actually add colour in or we take colour out. So this is, again, it's just like when you're changing the colour on your TV. So if we take saturation out, we're literally taking the colour out of the image. So you can see, I love this particular slider because if we go to the left, you can actually just get a really soft tint of colour. And I think this just looks so, so beautiful. Almost reminds me of a lot of the really, really old antique books where they just added a little tiny hue across some pencil images. Really, really beautiful. And if we go all the way across to the left, we actually get a grayscale image. So where we will use if we use the brightness slider, we get a silhouette. If I go back to 0 on that one, with the saturation slider, we actually get a grey, a black and white image. So if I just copy and paste that one and pop that over here, shrink it down, and then I'll go back here and we'll go back to 0 on this one. So you can see we're back at the original image. But if we go over to the right-hand side, we're going to add more vibrancy in. So we're adding more saturation, so we're increasing the vibrancy of this design. So you can see we can go all the way over to the right-hand side, gives you really, really vibrant, almost tropical colours on this particular design. But I'm just going to go just to here, just to get it a little bit more vibrant. And again, just going to copy and paste and pop that just down here in the corner. So you can see we've got all these different options just with those first couple of sliders. So I'm going to take this back to 0 actually. You click in there, so it's just a little bit easier. So we have now the blur slider, and the blur slider gives us it literally blurs the image. So I'm going to move the slider, but you know, it can sometimes look a little bit strange because obviously we are blurring the image. It literally blurs all of the design. So you can see there, we've literally just blurred it so it's disappeared. But if I bring this back, and I do the same as I did when I did this one and copy and paste the design, so we've got one over the top of the other. So if I right click and copy, right click and paste, what I need to do is make sure I'm working on the bottom of these two layers. So I click here, you can see that I'm actually clicked onto this one. At the moment I've got this one in between the two layers, so what I need to do is send that one back by one layer, just so I know that those two, in fact I can send it all the way to the back, it doesn't really matter for this particular file. So you can see there I've got the copy of a copy of a copy of a copy, because we're doing lots of copy and pasting on this one. And then I've got the next one here, which is the top one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click onto the bottom one of these two. So you can see in the layers tab, it tells me what order these are on the page. So I don't want the top layer, I want the second layer down. I'm going to go to the effects, and then I'm going to move that blur slider again. So what we're actually doing is we're blurring the layer behind. And what you'll see is we're actually creating a soft shadow around the design. So if I zoom into the page, you'll be able to see that in a bit more detail. So if I just bring this back, you'll see there, we're actually blurring the one that's behind, and you can just see we're just creating a soft shadow around there. And it just looks like we've done a little bit of inking around the edges here. To show you that again, I'm just going to literally click that one off and on, so you can see the detail there. So you can see around these bits here, around the edges, it's actually really crisp and clear. But when I switch that blurred layer back on, you see it just gives us that little look of a bit of inky, but also it's a nice way of adding a bit of depth if you don't want to use a drop shadow, because what it actually does is it uses the colours within the image, because obviously on the drop shadow, we can't actually change the colour of the shadow, although we will get to that in a little moment. But you can see here again, all we've done is we've just blurred the one underneath, and then all we need to do is group those two together so that we can work with them and change the size and everything if we want to. So we're just going to click and drag over those two, and then we'll just group those two together, and then we'll copy, we'll just pop that down there. So shrink it down again. We're going to pop that down here. So again, you can see, just as I move it over to the side, you can see that shadow coming on over there. So I'm going to bring the same image onto the page. Now there are a lot of images on this particular USB, but I've just chosen this particular one just to show you the first few of the effects. But what I want to show you now is the emboss feature. So the emboss feature has two sliders. And if you imagine when you've run a sheet of paper or cardstock or vellum through an embossing folder, that's the look we're going to get with these particular set sliders. So what we're going to do is we're going to move the first slider, and you see it's changed it to a grey box, and obviously nothing's happening at the moment. You can see that nothing's happening while I'm actually moving that slider. But when I move the second slider, so you've got amount and width, if I move this second one, you'll see we're actually embossing the detail of those flowers. And the more I move these sliders, the more detail I get in there. But what that also means is that we can actually make this look like etched stones. If I zoom into the page again, so again, I'm just using that little slider down at the bottom, you can see the detail on those flowers. Now I've gone a little bit too far there because there's quite a lot of detail in these flowers. So if I bring this one back down, you'll see there, we've just got the lines on the petals and just got the detail there. So you can see we've just added a bit more depth into there. What we can also do is we can fade this down so it actually looks like vellum. But because we're using an image with transparency around the edge, it has given us this grey solid border around the edge, and there isn't actually anything we can do about that because the graphics program literally reads everything that's within these boxes. However, if I then go to one of the textures, so I'm just going to delete this off the page. I'm going to go to the files, I'm going to go to one of the, let's have a look, we'll go with one of the textures. So let's go with this one here. So with this lovely pink one here. So I'm going to go into the effect. I'm going to emboss this one. So if I'm going to move that first one, it goes solid grey. That is normal. And then as I move this one now, you'll see that we actually get that stone effect. And that's because we're adding the detail of this design. So if I take those back, you see the actual design is there. If I copy and paste that design, go back to the layers and make sure that I'm clicking on the top one this time because I want to emboss the top layer. If I come back here, go to the amount and slide it across to the right, and then go to this one here, you'll see we're going to go really, really deep on the emboss here. So you see there's lots and lots of detail, lots of areas within that particular design. It looks really strange at the moment, but trust me, it's going to look amazing in a second. So if I click that off, you'll see there's the paper behind, and you can see here, this is where that watercolour effect actually flows, and it actually turn that watercolour effect into stone on this particular one. But again, if I just switch that off and on, you'll see the detail there. But what we're going to do now is back in this effects tab, we're going to use the opacity slider again, and we're going to reduce this grey one down. So you can see there, we're reducing that grey one down, and we actually now look like we've got a piece of dimensional embossed textured paper there. So you can see we can reduce this down quite a long way if we want to, or we can actually add a little bit of depth and dimension there as well. Again, I'm going to go back to the layers. I'm going to switch that layer off so you can see that we're just playing with one layer, popping it over the top of the other to actually maximise the functionality of the graphics program because we're combining the layers together. But what we can also do is we can switch that one off and print this out, and it will look like we've got some embossed vellum. Now at the moment, obviously, this is actually a grey design, so it's changing the tone of our pink background. So if we go back to the effects, I'm just going to jump down a little bit into our colour boost. So because we've got a pink background there, we're going to add a little bit of red into this, into the grey piece there. So all we're doing is moving that slider. If I go back to the layers and switch that off, you can see we've just added a pink tint to this particular piece here. If I then add a little bit of blue in to make it a little bit more tonal with that particular design, so you can see there it's a little bit of a bluey pink, so a little bit more almost going into magenta. If I switch that off and you see that one there, you can see there we're toning with it, but when I put the two together now, we've got a really nice pop of colour over the top of that background paper there. So I'm actually just going to save that particular design. So we're just going to click on here and we're going to go, going to create a new folder. So I'm going to call it MCS September, and I'm just going to call it paper 1. I'm just going to save that as a quick JPEG just there. So you can see we can save our papers at any point. So that's now a paper that I've saved using, and I've created using the sliders. But I can go back into my documents here and into the MCS September folder, and there's my paper now that I've just created. So you can see we've just saved our own design that we've created, which is completely unique to us. So that's the emboss sliders as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull these few onto the page here, and I'm just going to show you the difference. So we've actually created all of these different effects from this one image. So I'm going to zoom out of the page and pull them on. I'm actually going to grab hold of everything by pressing select all. I'm going to group it and shrink it down a little bit. And then I'm going to ungroup. And then I'm just going to move these down so I can pop them all on the page at the same time. So you can see here the difference that we've got in these different elements here. So I'm just going to bring this one on here. I'm just going to grab hold of them all, group them and shrink them all together, just so I can get them all on the one page, just to show you the difference between these different elements. So this is just a few of the sliders. We've still got a long way to go with the sliders, but what I want to do is show you these different combinations that we've created here using just some of the sliders. Like I say, we're about halfway down the sliders at the moment, but look at those different ways that we've actually used them to change that one image. So I'm going to change the image I'm using for the rest of the sliders, but look there. Lots and lots of different variety from one design. So this is the original one, and these are the changes that we've made so far. So I'm just going to do a quick save on this one, and we'll call it flower 1 just as a sheet, just to show that you can actually save your files at any point. Now this is a great way of using a design, playing with it to see what different effects and different types of colour combinations and finishes you can come up with. Then you can save it as a Minecraft Studio file. You can come back in later and you can actually take this one out, pop it into a new file, and then you can start working with that one. Or if you wanted to then create a file that's really nice and vibrant, but you know it's this flower you want to work with, you can go with that one as well. So I'm just going to clear the page down, and we're going to start using our other sliders now. So I'm going to go into gradients because the next slider is the swirl slider. So I'm going to come to this one here. So we've got a couple of different colours going on in this one here. So as you can see there, we've got the lovely blues and yellows. And I'm going to go back to our effects sliders. And you'll see here, just below the emboss sliders, we've got the swirl. So our swirl, now, I don't know about you guys, but this always makes me think of Captain Caveman. And hopefully you'll understand why. But it literally swirls the design. So you can see here, we are swirling that design just there, like so. Really, really simple. All I'm doing is moving a slider, and I'm actually changing that completely. So go back to 0, and you can see there. So again, I'm going to copy and paste this one. So I'm just going to copy and paste and pop it over to the side here. So we're going to click onto here, and we're going to swirl the design. So we're going to swirl it. So you can see there, we've swirled it. And then I'm going to copy and paste. I'm going to move that one over to there. And then we're going to swirl this one the other way, because we can swirl the opposite direction as well. So you can see there, you can actually create some really cool effects by popping two side by side if you wanted to. So we're going to copy and paste again. Copy and paste. So when we actually do the swirl feature, you see that what actually happens is basically it swirls from the center. However, the points across the edge actually slide across, which is what creates the swirl in the center. So if I move this back, you'll see that those points along the edge of the design are actually moving. So if you watch on this edge here, these are actually going to move up the page. So every little dot of color on that edge is moving up the page, which is what's creating the swirl. And then you can see there, it's moving around and going back down the other side. So if I take this back to 0, we can actually create starbursts as well. So what this will actually do is take the piece of the elements from one edge and from the vertical edges or the horizontal edges and actually move those ones. So you can see here, we are just moving one of the edges there. So we're actually creating, rather than a swirl, we're creating a starburst. You can see there we've actually created that. I absolutely love the effect of that one on this particular design, absolutely beautiful. And then we can also use the other one. So you can see here, this is actually then rotating the yellow into the blue. So you can see here we've got so many different options on here. So if I take that back to there, and then that back to there, you then see that we actually end up with a totally different look. So if I move that one over to there and just go back to the files, grab the original one, bring this onto the page, back into the effects, and I'm just going to move this one again so you can see there we're actually moving. So this is actually pulling the pixels from the side. It's actually moving those up and down, and they are actually creating these points on the top and bottom of the image. So you can see there, really, really beautiful. I'm actually going to copy and paste that one as well. So I'm going to copy and paste that one and move that one to one side. And then we're going to move this second slider here. So that's our starburst. So you can see we've now created the blue and yellow one as well. So I'm going to copy and paste that one and move that one over to the side. And then this one here, so this next slider moves the position. So it actually moves the position of the center point. So if I move this one over, you'll see we're moving the center point on the horizontal, so we can move it across to the left or across to the right. And the result that you get is different depending on your design, because obviously it depends where the color is. So we can actually move that there. If I copy and paste again, and then just drag this one over to the side. And then if I click onto here again, so just click onto this one. And if I then move this particular slider, so the right-hand slider, you'll see we're actually moving that center point up and down. So now we've got a really lovely blue with the yellows shining down. And then if we come down there, it's going to be predominantly yellow with the blue shining. But we can also then move the center points across to the other side. So we're actually creating almost like a sunshine, a sunburst there. So you can see here all these different options, absolutely amazing, from one backing paper, just using a few of the sliders. But what I really, really love about the swirl feature is because we've actually pulled all these edges in, we've pulled all the elements in from the edges of this design. What we've actually created is some transparency in this particular design. So if I bring back on the original, so if I just drag that onto the page, and then right click, and then send that to the bag, you'll see that we can actually pop the starburst over the top of that design. So we've now clicked, so if I just click on and make sure I'm on the top layer, so click onto, so I just need to click onto this one here to make sure I'm working on the right one. And then if I now move that starburst, you can see that with that background behind it, we can actually play with where we actually want to put that starburst. So we can have it up at the top, so we've got a really blue file, put it down at the bottom, so we've got a really yellow file, lots and lots of different options, and we can still move it when it's over that side. Absolutely stunning, beautiful, beautiful design. And it's a great way of creating a backing paper that contrasts with the one that you've already got on the USB or in your download, because you can actually choose exactly how you want it to look. So I'm just going to group those two together. I'm going to zoom out of the page so you can see I've got the original one on the page there. I'm going to select all, going to group them together, and I'm going to shrink them down. Because what I want to do is have those all laid out so that you can see the difference between them all. So if I shrink them down like so, ungroup, so there's the original one, there's this one, and then there's the full starburst, there's the original swirl. So you can see here we've got the swirls to the left, the swirls to the right. Oh, there's the original one again. There's the circle, and then there's this one here. So you can see we've got all of these different options from one backing paper. So again, this is the original, and you can see there, just unbelievable the difference that we can create. So if I just going to quickly save that page. So this is the swirl page. So I'm just going to save that one down. And again, we can save this down. And what I'd love to do, if it's something that I'm wanting to work on, but I'm not quite sure what the project is, I like to sit and play, because at that point you can actually see how these look. So you can sit and just play with the graphics program. You're being creative. You're actually building up a library of how different sliders work. And if you save this as a JPEG, you can actually print it out if you wanted to, so that you can see, and you could even type with the graphics program, you could type some notes over the top to say, this is the slider moved to 20.3, and this is the slider moved to, you know, this is the left slider, this is the right slider. And you can actually make your own library of how the sliders work. But also it's a great reference if you want to come back, because maybe you know that you want to use the swirl feature, but you're not quite sure which one. It makes the digital crafting quicker, so it means that we can actually get on with the physical crafting a lot quicker as well. Because obviously at the end of the day, Minecraft Studio is about doing paper crafting as well. So the next sliders we're going to look at are the colour boosts. So we've just had a quick look at those, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the colour boost in relation to, so we looked at it in relation to one of the flowers. If I bring this one on again, in fact no, we'll go with a different one from a different USB this time. So we'll go with Ready or Not. What have we got in here? So let's have a look, and we'll go with this one here. So we've got this beautiful wreath design here, really, really gorgeous. It's going to go into the effects, and we're going to go to colour boost. So with the colour boost sliders, this is basically a paint palette. So what we need to imagine is the amount of red within this design. Do you want to take red out, or do you want to add red in? And it will actually add red in to every element of the design. So it will make the greens a little bit more red. It will make the purples a little bit more red. But actually it may just make it tone with the particular piece of cardstock you're wanting to work with. We can do the same with green and blue as well. So we can get some really different looks. So you can see here, I'm just moving the slider very slightly, but we're just warming up the look of this particular design. So I'm just going to zoom into the page a little bit more so you can see there. So if I just take that back to 0, you'll see there we've got these lovely purples and blues and lilacs in there. They're a little bit cool in colour at the moment. So maybe you want to have a warmer design. So we're just going to add in a little bit of red. You can see there it just lifts the colour just a little bit, just to highlight those red warm tints of colour. We can go all the way across if we want to, so you'll see it'll make it really, really red and vibrant. Actually, it's making it almost a bit of a 70s vibe going on there, isn't there? But we can also take the red out. So maybe you want to have a cooler look to your design. So you can see here, because we're taking the red out, it means the blues are going bluer, the lilacs have gone completely blue, because we've removed the red from that particular area of the design. So I'm going to put that back to 0, and we'll do the same again with the green. So we'll add more green in. So you can see here, it's making the greens more vibrant, but it is also giving the flowers a green tint. But also we can take the green out. So here we're going into more of a vintage look for this particular image. So it's actually taken the greens down into quite an autumnal look. So you can see here we've gone quite brown on the greens now, because we're removing the green from the design. You can see if we go all the way along, it gives us a completely different look, really vibrant purples. If we go all the way up there, it goes really bright greens, but also it takes a lot of the lilacs into whites as well. But what we can also do, if I take the greens back to 0, we can do the same with the blues. So we can add blues in. So you can see here, we're now making it quite a cool design, but we're making it really, really, really blue and really quite icy, really lovely. But we're just literally taking the red out of these particular areas by adding in more blue. Really, really beautiful. It's almost looking quite frosty on there now. You can imagine actually, you know, these look like maybe they could be poinsettias if we just use some glitter to cover up the stamens of the lilies. Lots and lots of different options there. But if we take the blue out, you see we actually go into the yellows and the oranges. And again, we can go all the way out and take it to yellows and browns, but lots and lots of different options. So you can see that's how we can actually work with that. Now, one of the things I want to show you as well, just quickly, if I copy and paste, and I'm just going to switch off the bottom layer, click onto the top layer, I'm going to use my scissors, and I'm just going to snip away this particular flower here. And if you wanted to do this at home, then, you know, this is something where I would go around all the flowers, but at the moment, you know, it would take me quite a while. So we're just going to keep the inner of that particular one. So you can see I've just cut that one flower, and we're going to use the colour boost sliders on the rest of this design. So imagine if we'd cut all of these flowers out so that we'd only got the green and the yellows in there. If we then come into this area here and we use the colour boost, you'll see that we can actually warm up the rest of the design without warming up the flowers. So we can actually just change the colour and change the tone of those greens but without changing the tone of the flowers by adding another layer over the top and using the digital scissors to change the colours. So you can see we're just creating a different look to the design by using it in that way as well. So think about it in multiple ways. Something else I also want to show you with the colour boost is that the digital stamps, so you do have the digital stamps on here for all of the images that were 2 Red Robins dies. See here, how gorgeous is that as a digital stamp? Really, really beautiful. But if I go to the effects, because black, depending on your way of looking at it, black is either, it's not a colour, so it's either all of the colour or none of the colour, depending on your choice of how to view it. But if we use the colour boost sliders, because at the moment these colour sliders won't work because there is no colour within it for it to actually change. But if we use the colour boost sliders and we just move any one of them over, so you can see there now we've made that digital stamp blue. We can make it red or green if we want to. We can then use the hue slider and we've now got 360 different ink pads within the graphics program. And we can also make them pastel ink pads. We can make them more vibrant, strong ink pads. We can make them dual tone ink pads because we can increase the saturation. So there's so much that we can do with those colour boost sliders. So they are, if we've put sentiments on the USB and they are images of sentiments and we've saved them in black, then this is also how you would change those as well. So that's how we use the colour boost sliders. So I'm just going to, so you can see there, I'm just going to get rid of that one off the page. And then we have the faded edges sliders. So for this one, I'm going to get one of the textures onto the page. So we're going to go with, let's have a look, let's go with this blue one here. So I'm just going to zoom out of the page. And then we're going to go into, let's have a look in the gradients and we'll get this blue and green one on here. So you can see we've got two. In fact, no, we'll go with the pink and lilac. So you can see we've got some really good contrast going on between the two designs. So faded edges will fade out the edges of this particular design, but it will fade them to white. And then softer edges will actually fade the edges, but it will actually delete the pixels. So you'll see the difference in just a second. So if I make sure that I've clicked onto the top layer, so you can see I've got 2 layers on the page, make sure I'm clicked on the top one. So for faded edges, if I just move this slider over, you'll see that it softens the edges. So you can see we've got a really soft blend there as if we've done some inking, but it actually makes the edges a solid white. So we're just going to pop this one over to the side and then I'm going to bring that one back on again. So you can see there, so that's the same design that we've brought onto the page. But when this one's on the page, just move that one. When this one's on the page, it's solid white on the edges, so we can't see that blue through it. So that's the difference in where we'd actually choose to use this one or the softer edges. So softer edges actually does the same thing, however, it changes those pixels to transparent. So you can see here, we can now fade this pink into the blue and actually it just blends the two together. If I zoom into the page, you'll see it's literally making these pixels transparent and it just looks as if this is a perfectly inked blend on this particular sheet of paper here. So you can see there we can go all the way down to just a little tint of pink in the centre, so that's by coming all the way across to the right. Or we can just have a tiny edge on there as well, so great for making note papers and things like that as well. But also we can actually have it as an oval as well, so you can see there it actually pulls the corners in and creates an oval in the centre. So you can see here the sliders are called rectangle and circle. So if you are working with a square, then obviously the rectangle one would work as a square, and if you're working with a rectangle, you'll see that the circle one actually then becomes an oval, so you can see that there. But we can actually also work with the two together, so you can see there I've pulled those corners in. So you can see there we've pulled the corners in, but then we can actually pull the edges in as well, so we can actually have softer corners on there with the edges coming in as well at the same time. So you can see there's just a couple of different ways of using that particular element of the graphics program. So we'll call these edges. So you can see there, again, I'm just playing with all the sliders, and this is what I would do if this was my first time really sitting down and playing with the graphics program. I would actually just sit and play with the designs that I've got and just save the files, and then you can see exactly what you're working with. So actually I'm going to put those, let's have a look. So we're going to go back to here and we're going to go, let's have a look. So the next slider is our vignette. So we'll have a look at that one on one of these particular designs. So we'll go with this one here. So the vignette puts a frame around your design. So you see here again it says circle and rectangle. Again, because we're working with a rectangle design, the circle will become an oval, so it just curves the edges, and a rectangle, if you're working on a square design, it will become a square vignette. Because we're working on a rectangle, we will get a rectangle. So as I move one of these sliders, you'll see that those edges are coming in. Now at the moment it's black, obviously, you know, that may not be the look that you're going for. It may well be the look that you're going for. But we do have this box here. So if we click into this box, you'll see we go into the brushes tab. Now if you've watched the video on the tutorial on text, you'll see that this brushes tab is incredible. So you can see here, we've got this particular shade of blue. So this shade of blue here, this black line here, has millions of different little dots in here. So every click with your mouse, which is the center point of that cross that's moving around in this box at the moment, is a click on a dot, which is a shade of that blue, and you've got millions of them in there. You've also got every single one of these colors all the way down here, but we also have a color picker. So if I click on the color picker, you see the mouse changes to a pen. If I click here now, you'll see that we've actually chosen this particular shade of pink. If I click down here, you'll see that we've chosen the peach instead. So we're choosing the color of our vignette from the actual image using the color picker. And we get to that section by clicking on the color box in the vignette section. So if I now move this slider all the way across, you'll see that vignette comes all the way into the center and almost, you know, the image almost disappears. But what we can also do again is we've got the rectangle one, so we can have the solid edges as well if we wanted to. Again, great for making little note papers and things like that as well. But again, if we want to go into here and we want to change the color, we can come in and we can go for this particular dot there. So again, with the color picker, it only works on certain elements within the program, but the mouse changes to a pen and the point that you click on is the actual point that we are creating there. So you can see here, we're just creating our vignette on the design. So if I move the rectangle out of the way, you'll see we've got that circle one on there as well. Really, really beautiful. So we're just going to save this as a vignette. There we go. So I've now saved that as a JPEG file, which then means, again, I can go back into my documents and into my MCS September folder. And you'll see here, if I just delete this one off the page, I've got this one here, but now I can add a vignette to this one, but I can't edit the vignette because we've actually saved it as a flat file. But what that means is we can come back in and we can edit this one, and we can change the color, we can change the size, we can do digital punching, but this is a file that we can then do lots of other things within the graphics program as well. So that's our vignette sliders. And then we have drop shadow. Now drop shadow is fabulous. So we're going to go to our files, we'll go for another, let's have a look, let's go with the little bird here. So we'll go with this one here. Just stretch him up a little bit so you've got the detail on the page. So I'm going to go to the effects tab, I'm going to come down to drop shadow. So we have three different sliders on drop shadow. We have the depth, the direction and the blur radius. So the depth is literally the depth of the drop shadow. So you can see here, as I move this slider, we get a black line appear around the bird. And you can see there, the shadow is actually moving away. So that is the depth of the distance between the bird, the actual item you're creating the drop shadow for, and the drop shadow itself. So, you know, it depends on where you want the light to be coming from and the actual effect that you want within your design. So we're going to pop a little drop shadow on there. So I'm going to zoom into the page so you can see a little bit more of what we're doing here. So we can also change the direction. So if there is, it's not something we worry about particularly, but if there is, you know, if the light is coming, if the shadows in the image that you're working with are in a very specific area, then you can actually move where your drop shadow is so that it actually, the light flows throughout your image. So I'm going to pop the drop shadow just down to the bottom right on this one. And then at the moment, obviously, it's a very solid black drop shadow. So we're going to use the blur radius. So this will actually soften the edges of the drop shadow. So as I move this slider along, you'll see it just softens that drop shadow and it just gives us a little bit of dimension. So you can see we can come all the way up to the right and we can come all the way back. So if I go to files and I go to textures and just bring on this one here, I'm just going to send that to the back and you'll see that our little bird is sat on top of this paper. But if I go back to the effects, and I move the drop shadow. So if I just soften this here, you'll see, if I zoom into the page a little bit more just so you can see the detail on that there, you can see there that I'm softening the drop shadow from a solid line. If I just move it out from him a little bit more, you can see the detail there. We're just softening that drop shadow just to give a little bit more of a more natural look to the design. Now that's the basics of the drop shadow, but I just want to do a couple of little tricks for you. So I'm just going to copy and paste our little bird and pop him over there just for now. So on this one, you'll see, so we can't actually change the opacity of the drop shadow or the colour of it. However, there are a couple of things that we can do. So if I come back up to the top of our page and I copy and paste our little bird, you'll see that we've got 2 on the page there now. Well, we've actually got 3 because we've got this one. What I need to do, I'm going to click onto this one and switch him off. And then I want to click onto the back one of the 2 that I've got. So I don't want to work on the top layer, I want to work on the bottom layer. So what I want to do is take the drop shadow off the top layer to start with. So let's go all the way back to 0 on those ones. So 0, enter, 0 and enter. So at that point, our top one doesn't actually have a drop shadow. So I can see there, he's just the bird as he is. So what we're going to do, we're going to click onto the bottom one. I'm going to go to the effects. I'm going to reduce the opacity of the bottom design. And you'll see that actually reduces the opacity, including the drop shadow. So you can see we can actually soften the drop shadow a little bit more by reducing the opacity of that layer. If I go back to the layers, you'll see that all we've done is soften that particular layer that's got the drop shadow on it by making sure we're clicking on that layer when we're working, and then we're moving the opacity slider. What we can also do is we can change the colour of that particular image. However, because the drop shadow is black, it won't actually change the colour of the shadow. But what we can do is we can use the colour boost. So you can see there, I've made the shadow quite blue there. You can see it's very blue. You wouldn't have it that blue, but just add a little bit of colour into there. If I go back to the layers, you'll see just added a colour boost into that particular element of the design. So we're just making it a bit blue. And then if I go back to the layers, switch the top layer on, you see we've actually changed the colour of the drop shadow, and therefore we can then change the colour of the, I'm going to go back to the bottom layer there, just click onto that one, and then we can change the colour of the design there. So you can see we've actually changed the colour of the drop shadow using the colour boost. So not using the hue slider, use the colour boost. You can see there we're changing the colour. And what we did to reduce the opacity of it was actually use the opacity slider up at the top and then go back to the layers. And again, I can just click that one on and off so that you can see the difference between the two. So I'm just going to go back to the bottom one, add a bit more of a blue shadow into there. And then I'm just going to zoom out of the page so that you can see the difference between the two. So if I go back to my original one, you can see him here. So he's got the black drop shadow and he's got the blue drop shadow. So it just gives you that little bit of difference. But don't forget, if you want a slightly different look, you can always use the blur slider. So the blur slider would actually give you a shadow all the way around if you were to use the double layers like we have done just there. So I just need to group those two together just so that they are locked together if we wanted to resize. So you can see there we can resize and resize the bottom one at the same time. So that's the drop shadow sliders. We've got a couple more to go. So we've got our bleach. So if I click onto here, so let's go for a file. I'm going to go for one that's got quite a lot of contrast in different colours. So we'll go with this one here. So bring it onto the page. So this is, I'm just going to copy and paste so that you've got the original one as well, so you can see the difference between the two. And click onto this one, go to the effects. So the bleach, actually, the bleach is an interesting one. So it's great if you're somebody who loves the effect of mixed media and all the stuff that David and Lou Withers and everybody does. But maybe it's not the, maybe you're not into actually using the all the techniques and paints and mediums that they use. This will actually darken the dark colours, so you can see it deepens, it strengthens the dark colours, but it actually lightens the bright colours. So you can see the white here is actually brightened and the yellow is actually lightened. So it's actually bleached this area, but it's actually darkened this one here. So you can see it gives you a completely different colour tone to your design. So if we come all the way along, it really makes it look really vintage and distressed. But if we then add a little bit of brightness in, you can see we can reduce the opacity to get a little bit more detail in there. And then we can come into the colour sliders and we can play with those ones as well. But the if I just, there we go, so just take the brightness back to the full strength. But the bleach slider, you can see there, actually changes the tones of the colours within the image without actually changing the colours. So unlike the rainbow slider, which changes all of the colours, this actually keeps the blues, it keeps the reds, it just changes the strength of all those different colours and the intensity. So it gives you really rich, deep tones to your design. So you can see here's the original one, really nice and vibrant. Here's this one, which is great if we're wanting to do something that looks a little bit more antiqued as well. So you can see that's how the bleach slider works. And then last but not least, we have our distort sliders. So with our distort sliders, I'm going to show you on, let me have a think. So I'll go with one of the embellishments. And I'm going to go with the daisy one because we've actually got the lovely daisy head in the centre. So I'm going to stretch this up quite a lot. I'm going to go into here. Now this gives us almost a fisheye finish. So if you've got photographs and you want to have a little bit of fun, it gives you a little bit of fun with your photographs. So you can see here, I'm going to move the first slider and nothing happens. So we've got the inside, the outside and the magnification. So at the moment, we're moving the inside of the area that we're distorting. And then next we're moving the outside of the area that we're distorting. And then we're going to use the magnification so you can see it looks like nothing's happened. I actually quite like that effect, to be perfectly honest with you, because it's actually given us a hole in the centre, which looks like we've used a digital punch. But then we're going to magnify. So you can see when we magnify, it actually magnifies the entire image. So as we move this slider, you'll see that the image duplicates itself in the centre of the file. And then we start to duplicate the pixels within there. So you can see we're creating a different effect. But when we use it on one of these embellishments, we can actually get an embellishment within an embellishment. And I love this. It is so, so cool. I'm going to pop that one to one side for you, but you can see it's actually transparent in the centre there. But also, if I just shrink that down and click on title, we can make a background out of it that actually does something really, really weird. So I love the fact that it's just a little bit different on this particular feature. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to pop this one up to one side. I'm going to go to the files. I'm going to go back to one of the gradients, pull this one on. So pop that one to one side. And then I'm going to go to the effects. I'm going to go back down to the bottom. So you'll see we're going to move the inside of the area that we're distorting, which nothing happens at the moment. I'm going to move the outside of the area that we're distorting. Now you see here, so this is moving the outside of the area. So the reason we have this transparency in here is because this image has transparency on the outside edges of the design. So this one here has actually moved the outside edges here. So it's literally pulled this corner in, this corner in, this corner in, and this corner in, which is why we've got that look in the center. But I actually, sometimes this actually works for your matting and layering if you're wanting to create a topper. But also then if we move the magnification, you'll see that we can actually change the center of this one and we can make it look like we've got a bit of a wormhole in there. We can make it look like we've done some inking. It actually gives us another piece on the backing paper. But you can see there we can move these areas out. So you can see we're moving that area out, we're moving that area out. And then when we move the magnification, you'll see that we're actually magnifying the center of this backing paper, but just in the middle of the paper. So if I bring this all the way back down here, you'll see that we actually get lots and lots of different effects, because when we come back to the beginning, all we've got is the corners that have been pulled in. But then when we go here, you can see we've got different effects there. But you can see here, if I pull these back down again, you see that we're actually moving the pixels within this particular design. So you can see there, they're actually moving. And then we can actually go for a solid area in the center. If I move this one and move this one, you can see we can actually get a solid area in the center of this paper, which looks like we've done some matting and layering, but actually all we've done is play about with the sliders. But then again, we can just magnify the center. So it's, again, if you can imagine, if you're using photographs, you can actually really play about with the actual area that you're distorting. So it just gives you a little bit of fun as if you're using one of the social media filters or something, but play about with it on your different images, because the way that it works on these embellishments is just fabulous. If I put this back onto the page and stretch it up. Look at that. That is just amazing. I mean, I don't know how else you would create that other than doing lots of digital punching, because you'd have to digitally punch it, then copy and paste, digitally punch again, but you wouldn't actually get this distorted area around here, because what we've done is we've distorted the petals, and where you can see you've got that curve going on, that's actually the distortion of the of this feature that's actually pulled those pixels in and then created this beautiful, beautiful area in the center. So there we go, that's the last of our sliders. So there you can see we've actually worked through all the sliders in a little bit of detail. Now, if you do want to look at any of them in more detail, please do let me know in the comments below, because I'm happy to jump on and do a 5-10 minute video if we need to on a particular set of sliders. So I'm hoping that this has given you a lot more insight into the versatility of the graphics program. And I know we haven't actually completed a project as such today, but what I wanted to show you was the versatility of those sliders, because you can now see how you can incorporate those into the rest of your project. And I can't wait to see what you're actually going to do with them. So please do share your pictures in the Micro Studio official Facebook group and with us on social media or on email. But yeah, please let us know if you've got any questions, pop them in the comments below, and I look forward to seeing you again next time. Thank you very much. Bye bye. If you want to see more from Highlight Crafts, make sure you click the like button. Subscribe by clicking the subscribe button below, and click the bell icon to receive notifications of our future content. You can also click here to see our latest video, or click here to see more videos like this one.